All right. I finally got a chance to get onto my second recording from the weekend in Indy. Not in order at all. So this is the Mass Ave Crit, Category 3-4. So this was the first race of the weekend, and it's the second race that I'm doing my commentary on from the weekend. So the last race that I'll do is the Indy Crit. But I finally have some time to get to this one. Don't think I would have had time to do the Indy Crit today, so I'm doing the Mass Ave Crit first. And we're off. So I had very good start position for this race. I was in the second line of people, which is probably the best start position I've had in a race, basically. So I was happy about that. But the general theme of this race was moving backwards. Basically for the whole race until I eventually pulled myself out of the race, I was just moving backwards and moving backwards. And I think there were a couple reasons for that. One reason I think was that I didn't quite master these corners, especially the corner that leads to the front straight. It's you can see it. It's like the bottom left of the little map that's on the right side of the screen. So we're coming to it right now. Coming in this first time, I way overbraked. So immediately, I was already losing speed, losing ground, and had to put in extra effort just to stay attached. So that was one of the reasons I struggled with that back corner particularly. And the other reason was my legs just really didn't feel that good going into the race. I didn't feel like I had warmed up at all, and that's because I really couldn't. I didn't realize that there wouldn't be anywhere to ride around where the races were basically all weekend, and so I didn't have a trainer. I didn't bring a trainer with me to get a good warm-up in. So basically my warm-up was riding down about 100 feet of street, braking, and turning around and doing that again and again and again. Man, look at how many positions I'm losing. Like, we're having to do some pretty big watts coming out of these corners, but even with the watts I'm doing, I'm getting left in the dust. I just don't have it. I didn't have it. And combined with not having it, I get to this corner and just get left behind. So it all just added up to nothing good. And eventually, towards the end of what you'll see here, a crash happens in front of me. I end up slowing down, and looking back at the footage, it's pretty obvious that I used that as an excuse to just leave the race. There was really no part of me a few laps into this race that wanted to be racing. I really wasn't ready. So watching the footage, it was definitely pretty obvious that I used it as an excuse to myself to just basically take myself out of the race. Now, this was a hard race. There's no doubt about that. But I also definitely didn't bring my best. So I think the big takeaway from this race was that I'm not to the point in these 3-4 races where I'm going to be naturally moving forward or naturally being towards the front. When I was in 4 and 5 last year, I never even had to think about it. If I wanted to move forward, it was like nothing. But now I'm finding that if if I want to stay towards the front, it's not just about putting in the physical effort, it's about really thinking through corner to corner, straight to straight. That was fun. What do I need to do to stay in front? So I think, yeah, the takeaway from this race was I need to pay more attention to the goal of moving forward, which in turn will probably just prevent me from moving backwards. The other big takeaway is know the area that the race is going to be in, and if there's nowhere to warm up, bring a trainer. I find more and more that I really, really need a warm up before I can really do anything. I'm sure we've all experienced that. If you're doing an interval workout, often your second or your third interval is the easiest one because everything is just sort of awake at that point. I always find that, like, if I'm doing 4-minute intervals, for example, like the lactic acid, like, sort of short-term fatigue that I feel in my legs, like the feeling that just causes your legs to stop moving is huge. It's huge after the first interval. But then once I get through the second and third and fourth and fifth, it just becomes easier, really. And then, by the end you're getting tired, so. So I think it would have made a difference had I prepared better as far as getting a warm up. I think I would have been more ready. And I did take that experience from this day, which was the first race on a Friday, and I applied it to the next day, to the Indy crit, where I was really proactive about, I tried to be very proactive about getting on the course to do a couple laps, but it turned out there was a kids race, which is why there was so much time between the race before mine and my race. So I got out there and I did about half a lap, and that was about all I could do. So I also wasn't warmed up for that race, but I think the course suited me a lot more. Or maybe suited my relatively low level of fitness compared to some people here, the people who are really driving the races. And then Sunday for the Heroes crit, I did a really good job of getting on the course, and I don't think it was so much that I did something different. It was more that there wasn't so much kind of bullshit planned by the event directors, I guess, that just occupied space. So I was able to get in like maybe 10, just as part of my warm-up, 10 laps of the course. So I really knew the course going into it. And then in addition to that, there was plenty of space to get actual, like, several minutes of riding in one direction before you had to turn around at that location. So I was warmed up, and that was especially important on Sunday since that was the third race, and obviously there was some fatigue built up, which I didn't even realize until I started warming up. I actually felt really good, and then I started warming up and realized, like, oh, I actually have some knots to get out of my legs. Look who it is. Maria has entered the building to complete the commentary on the Mass Avenue 3-4 criterium, in which Mitchell pulled himself out after 20 minutes. Maria, what do you have to say about that? You won't be able to hear her. She said that it's embarrassing to know me. And I think the other thing that I learned from this weekend was that maybe Red Bull is not the answer to pre-race beverages. Really good during a ride, but I think I have learned at this point that as a pre-ride beverage, it just doesn't work for me. I've had this sort of sick feeling in my stomach before all the races this season, and I never correlated that to having the Red Bull, because I really like Red Bull. Like, if I'm going on a long drive, I'll drink it and I feel good. But I think maybe combined with the stress of racing, it just didn't work. And I didn't have it before. I didn't have it before the. Did I have it before Indy? No, I didn't have it before Indy or the Heroes Crit, and yeah, I felt way better both of those days. So might not be doing that anymore. Where are we at now? We're about halfway through this thing. I think I've really covered all I need to say. At some point you'll see that I'm dropping back a lot, and yeah, I'm just getting really tired. As if I know what I'm doing here. I'm just the one with the GoPro. getting away from me. This is the beginning of the end. So yeah, the crash should be happening on this lap after the next corner. There it is. And I think that'll be about it of the commentary. So, bye.